Welcome back to the Sasha Davis podcast. Today's episode is a conversation with Diane Sorensen. So she is a relationship-based parenting coach. Her educational background includes early childhood education and behavioral science. Diane is also a behavioral specialist for a Head Start program teaching these skills to teachers and program staff. Diane has studied and trained in conscious discipline, which is a comprehensive research-based model of self-regulation. She brings consciousness to the parenting and teaching toolbox, which is the foundation of Diane's teachings. Having worked in the field of early childhood education for over 30 years, Diane has dedicated her life to the development of young children. When she started implementing these skills of relationship-based practices in her classroom, others took notice. They could see, hear, and most importantly, feel a difference in the culture of the classroom. This is when Diane realized that children would benefit if parents also implemented these skills into their home environment and was inspired to start her own coaching program. This conversation is a good one. We talk about my personal experience with parenting, her personal experience with parenting, and how we grew up as young children and how that style of parenting has shifted in our lives. So enjoy, and I can't wait to see what you guys get out of this podcast. So here we go. And we're recording. Welcome back to the podcast. Today I have Diane Sorensen with me. I'm excited to dive into this because I feel like I personally am going to learn a lot. We're going to talk about conscious parenting, but before we get into that, I want to have Diane share with listeners a little bit of her background. And I met Diane online. We were able to meet each other in person just for one time this year, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought. And I really loved what you had to say in just even that short amount of time. And I've seen some of the things that you've been putting out online, and I can't wait to take a deeper dive into this. So I might just be selfish and ask you my own personal questions and hopes that some of the listeners can benefit from that too. So Dan, will you go ahead and introduce yourself and kind of give us a little bit of backstory on how you got started in this work that you do today?
Yeah, so thank you, Sasha, for having me on. I'm really honored to be able to be here with you. And I am a parent of 3 children who are now grown. And I was also a teacher for a lot of years. And I came into conscious parenting through the struggles that I had with my children as they were growing up. The skills I had was what I experienced in with my parents, and that was basically that the parent was in control, and it was an expectation that you controlled your children. And I think really the belief was compliant children equal a good parent. And so the flip side of that is non-compliant children equal a bad parent. And so I think we all kind of experience this not enoughness. I'm not enough individually, but I think when we become parents, it's like really ramped up. And in my opinion, we are really afraid of, there's a lot of fear, I think, around not being good enough as a parent, or the fear of messing up our children or being judged as that bad parent. So, controlling my children didn't go so well, and we experienced some big behaviors, and it took a lot before I was ready to go, oh, maybe there's something else I should be doing. And when I opened up to that possibility that maybe there was something deeper here, that's when I was introduced to conscious parenting and or conscious discipline, or what I call relationship-based practices. It's all kind of the same thing. And I implemented these practices into my life, into my parenting, and into my classroom. And people took notice that the culture in my classroom was different. And so eventually what happened was I left the classroom to teach the other staff these skills. And so that we could better relate to the children coming in to our program. So, and now I also am coaching other parents in these skills as well.
I love that. I think it's cool how you have different perspectives, from the student perspective or from the teacher perspective, children who aren't yours, and then also children who are yours, and even the realm of coaching other parents. I can certainly relate to my upbringing, and I believe maybe it's a generational thing, or you just don't know what you don't know. And so I think our parents learned what their parents did, and it's just kind of been passed down generation to generation until somebody's like, whoa, wait a minute, maybe this isn't working. And I can definitely relate, because if your kids don't listen to you, even like when we were growing up, if I didn't listen to my parents, if we were just being defiant, they would, shame your parents, saying, oh, you can't control your kids are unruly, you're out of control, or those kids are bad kids. And then the children, like myself, I was deemed a bad kid. And so then when that's in the forefront of your mind, you do more bad things because you feel like you are a bad child. So what would be like the first steps into bringing awareness to that? And then also how to fix that situation. So like my personal situation where the parent disciplined, yet the child kind of rebelled and then fell into that trap of being a rebel. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, very much so. And so you're exactly right when you talk about it's generational, and it for sure is. We're not bad parents. Our parents weren't bad parents. It's just what we knew, and what we mostly know in traditional type parenting skills or discipline, really a discipline based in the foundation of fear. What we now know through research is fear is the number one barrier in our relationship with our child. It's also the number one barrier in learning and growing and our ability to create change in our life. And yet we use fear all of the time to be able to either stop our children from doing inappropriate behavior or get them to do a different behavior.
Like if you do this, I'm going to spank you, or if you do this, you're going to go into timeout, or just like,
right.
To me, it's almost like threatening.
Yeah, it is. And when the brain perceives a threat, it goes to fight or flight. So we're creating this barrier actually to what it is we want. And so if we feel like we're banging our head against the wall, we kind of are. In that way, we're kind of being part of the problem. And it actually creates the behavior that we don't want. So in conscious parenting, we just kind of become aware of that. We step back, and we've just always done this because we've never questioned it. So when we step back and we actually question some of those things, we can see that, oh, this isn't getting me closer to what I want. It's actually getting me farther away. So it's a practice that's based actually, it's a big shift away from the foundation of fear to a foundation of love. And it's about the relationship. And so when I say a foundation of love. I'm not talking about the, love, the feelings of love. What it actually is a willingness to see the best in ourselves and the best in our children. So, like you said, you were seen as defiant or disrespectful. And when we see children from that lens, we react in a way that isn't very helpful. We threaten them or hand out some type of what we would call consequence, which really is more like punishment.
I was going to say consequence to me, I think of natural consequence. Like if you jump too high, you will hurt yourself, versus like, don't do that or I'm going to spank your butt,
That's exactly it. But I think we have often replaced the word punishment with consequence because it's more socially appropriate. But
I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
But the goal with punishment is really to get the kid to feel bad. So the belief is if they feel bad about doing something, they'll do it better, which totally is not true. When a child feels bad, they usually do not make better choices. And the same with me. When I feel bad about myself, I don't make very good choices. And the goal with consequences is to teach. So it's to teach them a new skill rather than the one they're using. So if we see children through the eyes of consciousness or a love-based foundation, we see a child who either one, it has really big feelings that they don't know how to cope with, or they need another tool to use to get their needs met. And so in that way, we can teach them how to deal with big feelings, and we can teach them how to get their needs met using different tools. However, we have to master those tools first. And like I say, we are often not aware or conscious of the behaviors that we're actually using. So take, for instance, often we see our children's behavior as disrespectful. So if we want more respect from our children, what I say is, and what I've learned, is to shine the light away from our children and actually shine that light towards us. So I'm going to be more respectful, and I'm going to start with myself. I'm going to be more respectful with myself. So how are we, we have to question, how respectful are we to ourselves? Do we give all of our time and all of our energy away to others and leave ourselves depleted? How do we talk to ourselves in our head? Do we talk to ourselves? Are we critical of ourselves, or are we compassionate? So that's where we're going to start. And then we're going to be more respectful to our children, because the truth is, when our children are doing what we want them to do, we are respectful. When our children aren't meeting our expectations or using a behavior we don't approve of, often we are not respectful. And so children have to experience respect to be able to use respect. They have to know what that looks like, sounds like, feels like before they can offer it.
So how do you teach a child respect? Because that was something I was called a lot of times when I was younger, was, you are so disrespectful, da 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 da. And a lot of times I don't think children, or at least myself, I did not know how to be respectful. The only time that I got attention or discipline or, a talking to was when I had done something bad, but I was never really praised for anything that I had done good or shown what I should do more of. So how can you teach a child respect if you don't necessarily embody respect? And I know you kind of said like listening to yourself, but what actions can you do to teach your child?
Okay, so here's here's the truth is we don't really teach our child respect. Our children learn respect through experiencing it. And that kind of goes with self-regulation as well. We don't really teach it. They have to experience it. And their experience is through us. So we can't give respect unless we have received it. And like you said, you didn't feel like you received much respect. I felt that same way growing up. I didn't receive respect. And so what we have to do now is we have to give it to ourselves. So how can I respect myself? Okay, let's start with time and our energy. We can start by creating some space for ourselves to meet our own needs. And part of that is a morning routine. You can start a morning routine, getting up 10 minutes earlier than the children, and getting a cup of coffee, just getting your energy right for the day. And then carving out, you can start there and carve out space in your day as you can to honor yourself, to give yourself what you need. And it's a lot of awareness, because we go around just doing our thing and we're not even aware that we're not respecting our own time or our own energy or how we talk to ourselves. We need to become aware of that voice in our head, because here's the deal. How you were disciplined as a child is how you will discipline yourself. And how you discipline yourself is how you will discipline your children. And that's how they will discipline themselves in their head for the rest of their life, unless we become conscious of it and learn and practice new ways.
I love that. I love how you threw in the morning routine. I preach that the morning routine can solve so many problems. I mean, for me, having that space to just kind of be, to be me, to get a few things done that I want to get done before I call it the chaos of the day. Maybe I shouldn't call it chaos, but it feels very much like, things are in control, but they're out of control because you're taking care of other humans. So you can only control kind of how you think, act, and feel about the day. And when you can kind of get your mind right in the beginning, you're better able to tackle those things. So the two things that I guess come up for me in terms of being disciplined is I was yelled at a lot, and I the spanking, the timeout, the grounding. Can you speak on those four things? What did I say again? Yelling, spanking, timeout, and grounding. Those were the four ways that I was disciplined as a child. What does that look like in terms, what type of discipline is that? And what would be the conscious parenting version of that?
Okay, so we have a lot in common, Sasha. These are the ways, except for timeout. Timeout wasn't a thing back when I was growing up.
It was for me when I was younger. And then, there came a time where I guess timeout didn't work anymore and you got sent to your room, you were grounded. But the corner, I remember go stand in the corner. And it was wow, what the fuck am I going to do in the corner? Okay, I'm just going to stand over here and be a shithead then. So.
Right. Yeah. So the spanking, the yelling, the grounding, those were all things that I also experienced. And those are fear-based disciplines. Timeout is also a fear-based discipline. But what I think has happened with timeout and some of the other strategies we now use, because we've tweaked this traditional discipline somewhat, but it's still grounded in that foundation of fear. And we've taken some of the physical control, and we came to a point where it was no longer socially acceptable to physically control your child. So we kind of moved to this, I think, emotional control. with time out and, I'm going to take this away, or I'm going to give you something. It is still all ways to get our child to act in a way we want them to. And when we say get our child to, how do I get my child to? You're seeking control. And control is based in fear. We feel safe when we have control. So what conscious discipline based on a foundation of love would say is we're going to teach our children different skills to use. Because a problem with the traditional is we just try to get it to stop. And there needs to be something else for them to do. They can't just stop a behavior. You need to fill it with something else. And so with conscious discipline, we actually teach them new skills.
I can relate to that. So I work with kids with disabilities, and my daughter is playing in the sink right now. I let her do dishes. If she wants to do dishes, she can do dishes. So I work with children with disabilities, and that's another thing that I feel like maybe has helped me as a parent. Not that I'm like perfect. I still have my yell moments too. I have to like walk away. I'm like, I need a minute or I'm going to snap kind of thing,
Yep.
But in terms of working with special needs individuals, you have to give them, we call it redirecting. So you can't just stop a behavior. That would be like me saying, hey, Diane, stop thinking about a red balloon. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to still think about a red balloon. Like our minds can't process the negative. And so you have to shift the thought from one thing to another. And so I've always referred to that as redirecting. So if you have a negative behavior, you have to replace it with something else, either something else entirely or a positive behavior, just to quote unquote stop what is happening. And I find that that's also been helpful in my personal experience with parenting. Whereas like if my child's doing something where I'm like, no, don't do this, be careful, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, hey, let's go over here and let's do this thing. So for example, literally right now, my daughter went and filled up a cup, and she thought that she was going to do dishes in the living room with this cup and wash things. And it's like, no, you can't do that. Stop doing that. Okay, well, as soon as you say stop, she's going to be like, well, what am I supposed to do with this water in these dishes? And it's like, okay, well, here, you come over here. The sink is where we play with water. The sink is where we do dishes. Does that kind of make sense? I mean, would that be a form of conscious parenting, or am I like totally off base?
No, yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, redirecting them is part of it. But also, and I want to go back to the word discipline. I think discipline has also over the years come to mean more or less how you're going to punish your child or how you're going to control them. And really discipline, and Dr. Becky Bailey says this, and she is my mentor. She created the Conscious Discipline program. And what she says is, discipline is not something we do to children, it's something we build within them. And so we want to build discipline within our child so they are able to control and manage their own self. The problem is we weren't really raised to be self-disciplined, a lot of us. We were raised to, have control over others. And so what conscious discipline or conscious parenting does is we're going to not control others on the outside. We're going to control ourselves on the inside. And that is very powerful. And so a lot of times when I'm working with teachers or parents, there's a lot of fear around the letting go of control. But it's the fear of letting go of control over other people, and it's gaining control of ourselves. And once we kind of start to make that shift, it is very empowering. And it's also empowering to the child. Conscious parenting also considers the child's feelings, because really their behavior is expressing their inner world, their inner feelings on the outside. And so when we consider that what they're showing us is how they feel on the inside, we can offer more compassion with them. And I think we often believe that, well, we can't be compassionate and set a boundary. And we absolutely can. In fact, empathy is needed in order for us to set boundaries. We can empathize with the child that this boundary is really hard for you and you can handle it. And I'm going to be right here with you in order for us to be consistent and stick with those boundaries. Because that's one theme too I'm finding with myself and others I work with, is that boundaries are very hard to set and be consistent with. And again, that just starts with being empowered in our own self. The more we learn about our inner world, the more we understand our child's inner world. And when I first started learning about conscious parenting, I had no idea what that even meant. I'm like, my inner world, what is that supposed to mean? Or, being authentic, you're being your authentic self. And I'm like, well, I'm just me. What does that even mean? So it's a lot to wrap your mind around, but every little step is golden. And I'll just say, in my classroom, you were talking about saying stop. We say stop to our kids, stop doing that, stop doing that. And the children also will say that to each other. They'll be like, stop it, stop it, stop it. And when we implemented relationship-based practices in my classroom, they didn't do that anymore, because I was being empathetic to children who were melting down and saying, he's really having some big feelings right now that he doesn't know how to deal with. And then I taught the children how to breathe and create space for this child who is melting down, because that's something that they could contribute. And so the classroom started, you didn't hear stop it anymore. What you saw was children breathing for other children, or reaching out their hand to rub somebody's back who was feeling sad. It was phenomenal what children can learn if we change what we're doing. And that can change the world.
Yeah, kids are like a sponge. I have a 3-year-old, and there's some phrases that she says, and I'm like, where did she get that from? And then Will, my husband, will say, you say that all the time. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, I guess I do. They just literally soak up everything. So can you give us, I guess, like before and after examples? Like I know you said in the classroom, kids are being more empathetic and they stopped saying stop. But what would be like a behavior or a situation that would have warranted, like, okay, everybody stop what you're doing? And then how did you make that shift? Like, what did you replace that word with?
Okay. So I do want to say too, that as teachers in the teaching world, it's kind of like in the parenting world. We get very afraid of judgment. And if we aren't controlling our classroom, the fear is judgment from others that, well, she's not a good teacher. She's a bad teacher because she's not controlling her classroom. And when we use a behavior with a child, that child learns something that defines that child. It defines that child you're talking to, but it also teaches all the other children in the classroom about who that child is and how we treat that child. And so, you know, there's always the child that is always in trouble. And other children always know, even, you know, in our early classrooms, our early childhood classrooms, children by 3 years old, they know who the bad kids are because of our response to those children. So I'm sorry, what was your question again?
No, you're fine. And I totally agree with that. Like the labeling of children very early on, like, oh, that person's naughty, or that thing's bad, or that thing's good, or
not even the words we say, but it's how
we react to them.
Yeah, it's our body language, it's our facial expressions. I mean, children are very intuitive, and our energy. Children, the biggest way they communicate is through energy. And so the energy we bring is huge. And so that's another thing to become aware of, is what energy am I bringing into my home or into that classroom?
Yeah. And I guess the question is what shifts did you make within the classroom to start to have, like a more empathetic, a more mindful classroom?
And so the shift came from me. It's really about teaching from the inside out, or parenting from the inside out. It's really about, I learned I could take a step back and start being aware of what my thoughts in my head were, how I was feeling, because at that time I didn't even know about feelings. I mean, I knew how to label feelings, but I didn't know how to feel feelings. And that became apparent to me one day when somebody said, or maybe it was when I was reading it, what do you feel? Okay, I'll feel angry. And where do you feel it in your body? And I'm like, well, that's crazy talk. What's that supposed to mean? And so I realized, oh my goodness, I can label feelings, but I don't actually feel them. And I realized too, and this is one of the biggest reasons I thought I need to learn more about this, and I need to bring this to my home and my classroom, because as a teacher, we were taught that to tell children feelings are okay. You can feel sad, you can feel mad. And so we are telling kids that, but it's not what we're acting out. You know, when they're crying, we say, stop it, you're okay, you're fine, it's not that big a deal. We don't let them feel their feelings. And that has to start with us. So it's been a huge journey of self-discovery. And I'm still on that. And then you offer to others what you want. So I wanted the children in the classroom and in my home to be more respectful. And like I said at the beginning of this interview, it had to start with me. I had to go inward and understand how I was treating myself, which wasn't very good. I was super critical of myself, and I still work on that. But when I'm critical with myself, I'm also critical with others. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And so really the biggest shift would be your mindset and the way that you approach a situation. Would you agree?
Oh, mindset. Yes. That's the biggest shift. Yes.
I think it's important to note that you said it's okay to feel your feelings. And I run into this all the time, and I find it comical almost, especially like on social media or even some of these other like personal development podcasts. We are quick to tell people that that's what they should do, yet we don't embody it ourselves. And then when it comes to the teachable moment, we also don't implement, where we say, oh yeah, give yourself time and space, respect yourself, give yourself boundaries. It's okay to feel feelings, yet we don't do any of those things. So I feel like we know it on a very surface level, but to practice it and to embody it is completely different.
That is exactly right. And what the rule that I have come to embody is I cannot ask somebody else to do something that I'm not willing to do. And so now when I'm teaching our staff these skills, I always ask them, you know, are you willing to do that? So you're telling this child to go over to the person that was being aggressive with them and use their words. Are you willing to do that with a coworker? You know, and oftentimes it's like,
oh, calling them out.
Right. So we have to embody it ourselves before we can use it with children. We just can't teach anything we don't know ourselves, and not know it on a, like you said, a surface level, but be able to implement that into our lives.
Mm-hmm. I know that that's something that I'm personally working on is, when my daughter cries or when my son cries, I try not to become triggered by it, because that in itself is a form of communication. And I have to remind myself of that. What are they trying to say to me? And I have to be quick to say, okay, what is it that they need? It's okay to cry. It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel the feelings. Mm-hmm. But I still feel in myself, the shift happening, because I get the tightness in my chest, and my immediate reaction is I want to yell, I want to scream, I want to throw things. And I have to make the conscious effort to not do those things. And it is one of the most uncomfortable things I have done in a very long time, or even to just allow myself the space to have moments where I can yell or have big emotions or cry or feel sad. It is, for me personally, so much harder than saying, oh yeah, just feel your feelings. Because I think as adults, like myself, I have the fear that I will be stuck in that emotion, or I will be stuck with that feeling if I allow it to come through. I feel like I'm always going to be sad, or I'm always going to be yelling, or I'm always going to be angry. And that's not true. So how do you help somebody work through that?
Well, and that happens because traditionally we don't allow feelings. Feelings are uncomfortable. That causes upset. So do not be saying anything to upset anybody. And if they're upset, then we want to shut that down. And that's what we experienced, most of us.
Or we want to fix it for them. How can I fix this?
Right.
How can I fix this?
Right.
It's like anything to avoid discomfort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because when we were young, that's what our parents did. When we got hurt, they said, oh no, you're okay. You're okay. You're fine. It's not that big a deal. Just, run along, suck it up.
My parents would always tell me to rub some dirt on it. Rub some dirt on it. You're fine.
Yeah. Or if you're worried about something and they're like, oh, it'll be fine. Let's go get some ice cream.
Oh yes.
20 years later,
I'm guilty of that though.
When 20 years later, what happens when that feeling bubbles up? We go get some ice cream or something to eat.
Ice cream. Yeah, that makes perfect
we've
sense.
learned to numb our feelings as children. And so we continue to do that as adults. And yeah, if you grew up in a home, as I did, and it sounds like you too, we didn't do feelings, everything needed to be, not too excited either. Not too happy, not too anything.
Yeah, the loving side even was, I think that's kind of where I get a lot of my awkwardness now is, and this is something that has also you talk about conscious parenting comes from like a love standpoint, and that word used to make me cringe. Like we never said, not very often did we say like, I love you or things like that. Growing up, we didn't hug really, we didn't kiss really. And if we did hug, it was like that awkward, like side hug. There was really no embracing one another physically. And even like saying that still makes me uncomfortable. But in order for my children to not grow up with those same quirks or same discomforts, I force myself, I shouldn't say, it comes pretty naturally now to hug them, to love on them, to tell them I love them, to kiss them often. And in the beginning, it was kind of strange, but with time, things become easier. And the hope is that, the chain breaks with you and that you have to do something different in order to have different results.
Yes. Yes. And you were talking about, you notice when when your child have feelings, you're triggered. That's
absolutely.
to realize, oh, I'm triggered. There's a tightness in my chest. There's, so once you know you're triggered, then you can use tools to calm yourself, like some breathing techniques to be able to calm that and change that voice in your head to, oh my God, this is terrible, to you're safe. I can handle this, keep breathing, or, whatever.
So what would you say to me, because this just happened, was it today or was it yesterday? I don't remember. And maybe this is like, I felt like I was having a pretty great day. Things were going pretty smooth, but I'm easily triggered when both kids are crying. And then I know that the energy become like, there's a shift, obviously, in the energy around me. And then I start to get anxious and tightness in the chest. And then my dogs sense that. So then they start whining and barking. And before you know it, like the whole house is screaming, crying. And the thought that always goes through my mind is like, I'm going to burn this fucking house to the ground. And it is I'm serious. Like, I know that sounds so terrible, but I'll text my husband and I'll be like, I'm done. I'm going to fucking burn the house down. Like, I can't handle this. And so that's my biggest challenge that I'm working on right now is all of the screaming, all of the barking, all at the same time.
Yeah. And so that is a practice. So what you want to do when that happens and you notice that you are being triggered is to do some deep belly breathing. And what that does is it creates a pause between what is happening and how you're going to react or respond. It slows you down enough to help you feel the feelings that are coming up, because the emotion is all that energy and motion inside of you. So if you do some deep belly breathing, and research says 3 deep breaths will unhook the stress response in the brain. So for you, and this is funny again that we have so much in common.
Do you want to burn the house down too?
That type of noise is triggering for me. So when my grandkids are here, my husband is a very hands-on, wrestle around. I mean, they're screaming. But that is a trigger for me, and I have to really breathe when they're doing that, or put earplugs in.
Yeah, I've found, I can't remember who recommended the earplugs thing. I've done that a few times, or I'll put like calming music in and my earbuds when they're just like at the height of it. Cause I'm like, they're just kids. This isn't going to last forever. This is just momentarily, but every now and then it'll catch me off guard. And I feel like, I probably know, I shouldn't say probably, I know on a deeper level what I should do, but I didn't set myself up for success in the moment. And the trigger got to me and I wasn't, I guess, prepared for it. So that is something that I'm working on. And I suppose it will get easier with time. It's just a muscle. It's a practice. It's something that I need to strengthen. But I do know that is very much the trigger that I'm experiencing right now is, and I know when I start to get that anxious and tightness in my chest, it's like a snowball effect. It just keeps getting bigger and affecting everybody around me. And then I think that's where the dogs chime in. And then, it's just like adding fuel to the fire at that point, so I need to be more aware and more proactive in the beginning before I let it get to that kind of heightened state. So I'm like brainstorming, like, how do I set myself up for success?
So what I'm hearing you say, Sasha, is that you have found some tools or coping skills to help you calm during those times, and you're not doing it 100% every single time.
No, I wish I was, but a lot of times
I don't know that any of us can do that 100% of the time. So the good thing is, though, when you are triggered, that is a sign that, here that thing is, I have something there that needs to heal, because that's actually what a trigger is. A trigger is our emotional wounds that we've gotten from childhood. So that allows us to go inward and heal that. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, I like that. It's so interesting because I would say that to somebody else and be like, oh, great, you're triggered. That's an opportunity to grow. And I know that. And so I just need to remember that in the moment.
Right.
Maybe I'll write opportunity somewhere on my wrist so that when I'm yelling, I'll be like, oh yeah, this is an opportunity. And, I chuckle now because the next time it happens, like talking it through with you, I'm going to catch myself the next time and I will probably laugh about it. And laughter also kind of releases tension in the moment too. So
absolutely. Yeah. And so for your listeners, just, so people sometimes are like, oh, I want to learn about this, for the idea that, so I can take the conflict out of my home. And to be honest, I think that's what my first initial, goal was too. Oh, I'm going to learn this and then there won't be any conflict. But actually, there is always going to be upset and conflict, right? And so if we want to take it away, we're not going to, our children they don't grow up to be adults who know how to deal with upset or conflict. And so that's what it's really about. So there's a lot of discomfort in learning conscious parenting, but I will tell you that it is absolutely worth the discomfort, because on the other side of that is a lot of freedom.
Yeah. I like how you put, you will always have conflict. And I feel like if we avoid conflict or shield conflict in any way, shape, or form, then that's exactly what we're going to teach our children, is we are going to shelter them from conflict. And then when conflict arises in their life outside of our home, they will not know how to handle it.
Exactly. Yes.
I love that. No, and it's just, part of me is sitting here thinking like, man, no matter what we do,
we're going to have conflict. But we can become more comfortable with it and know how to manage ourselves through it.
Yeah. Don't let it consume us. Yeah. I think no matter what we do as parents, our children will have their own lessons that they need to learn in life. And our goal is to work through the things that affected us as children so that those aren't passed on to our kids. But there's going to be things that they'll need to work through. And that's just part of, I think, being a human being. We all are put on this planet and we all have lessons to learn, and it's not up to us to fix the next person's lessons. It's up to us to fix what our lessons are and then embody that and inspire others and teach others around us.
Right. Absolutely. Our children are going to have their own journey, and we need to allow them to have that journey.
Yeah, I think conscious parenting kind of creates the space for that, for like mistakes are okay. And everything's a learning opportunity. There's no shaming. There's no punishment. Maybe I shouldn't say no, but turning it around to a learning experience versus like.
Right. And that's not to say our children aren't going to experience discomfort, but we're not going to, beat them over their head with, whatever punishment.
Yeah. I like that. No. And I'm reading, I just started reading Dr. Shafali's, the one that everybody talks about. I don't remember I'm listening to it on Audible. Yeah. And
I have that one too. I'm rereading that one again.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because this is all fascinating to me. And I feel like a lot of it ties into just personal development, personal journeys, self-awareness, mindfulness, and looking at things from other perspectives and saying, okay, is this something that I would embody? Is this something that I would do? So if it's not, why are you asking somebody else to do it? And it is very, very eye-opening. And I really enjoyed this conversation. So to kind of start wrapping things up, what do you want listeners to take away from this conversation?
I think, I just want people to know that there is beauty in your child's behavior. Your child's behavior doesn't have to be something that we're embarrassed about or feel ashamed about or afraid that we're going to be judged about. I think our child's behavior in my situation, for sure, my children's behavior was the gateway to better understanding, learning, and growing for me. It really is an opportunity to understand our own inner world so we can understand our children's inner world. And that is a beautiful thing, because from that understanding, it evolves into a relationship based on mutual trust and acceptance. And from that becomes willingness and cooperation. So you can create the environment in your home that you desire.
I love that. I absolutely love that. So how can people learn more? I know you mentioned you have a coaching program. So tell us a little bit about that and how people can connect with you if they want to learn more.
Okay, so my coaching program is a 6-month program, and we learn relationship-based practices. And people can find me on my website at dianesorensen.net, Beauty and Behavior. I also have a Facebook group that you can join if you just want to have a little sneak peek about what it's all about. And that is on Facebook at Beauty and Behavior.
I'm also a part of that group, and it's been on my to-do list to go back, and because you do live videos all the time, and I've been able to catch a few of them. And every time I see one pop up, I'm like, all right, save this video. So I just need to go back and like watch and rewatch every single video. You guys, there is tons of valuable information in that Facebook group. So I highly recommend joining that. So what I will do is I'll put all the links in the show notes for listeners so that they can just scroll down and click on those so that they can find out more about you and beauty and behavior, conscious parenting, all of it, relationship building. I find this stuff so fascinating. So I appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation with me. I feel like a lot of listeners are going to benefit from this.
Well, thank you so much, Sasha. It's my favorite thing to talk about.
Thank you for listening to the Sasha Davis podcast. It would mean so much to me if you could take 3 seconds out of your day and leave me an honest review on your podcast app, or take a quick screenshot and share to your social media and tag a friend, letting us know what you enjoyed most about this episode. And as always, for free resources and ways to work with me, head on over to my website, sashadavis.com, or send me a message on Facebook or Instagram at sasha.davis. And I hope you guys have a kick-ass day.